Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for Spiderhead. The time to worry about crossing lines was a lot of lines ago. Hey, Spiderheads! if that's what we'll go with. My name is Nate, and this is our spoiler-free review for Spiderhead. Special thanks, as always, to our friends at Netflix Canada for giving us the opportunity to see this movie early for review. Before we get started, if you're joining us for the first time, we are Geekcentric, a podcast focusing on the world of movies, TV shows, video games, toys, and collectibles, and all things geek-centric. Now, of course, I couldn't complete this test without my favorite test subject, Justin Lawrence. Drip on.
Acknowledge. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. This movie was a movie, and we're gonna get into it. Before we do, I wanted to. This might be a bit personal, but I want to know: have you ever done a medical test? Have you ever done a I don't know what they even call this. A trial?
Like a medical
trial?
Trial, or been part of a medical experiment? No.
That you're allowed to talk about. Yeah.
Yes. No. There was one point where I was looking at it based on allergies. I have severe allergies that kind of manifest itself in very interesting ways, and sometimes that might be very sensitive skin. So I was exploring something like that. I never did go through with it just because I didn't feel comfortable with it, and it was a lot of effort for what could work or might not work. But it doesn't seem like the people in this movie have a choice whether to be a part or not to be a part. At least I was given that option, which, again, they're done for a reason. It's why we have medical drugs that we have today, is because of people actually taking part in trials and being a part of the forwarding of science, if you will, right?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, in this movie, it certainly seems, like we see some folks that get themselves into some tests that, as you said, they maybe not fully, agree to or acknowledge, as they keep saying throughout the movie. But before we pump some darkened flocks into our veins, let me increase my Verbuluce and articulate the specifications of this cinematic motion picture. You're going to hear us say a lot of the names of all the drugs in this movie. In a state-of-the-art penitentiary run by brilliant visionary Steve Abnesti, inmates wear a surgically attached device that administers dosages of mind-altering drugs in exchange for commuted sentences. There are no bars, no cells, or orange jumpsuits. In Spiderhead, incarcerated volunteers are free to be themselves until they're not. Need to lighten up? There's a drug for that. At a loss for words? There's a drug for that, too. But when two subjects, Jeff and Lizzie, form a connection, their path to redemption takes a twistier turn as Abnesti's experiments start to push the limits of free will altogether. Based on the New Yorker short by George Saunders, Spiderhead is a genre-bending and darkly funny psychological thriller. That's how they describe it. I don't know if we'll get into it. Directed by Joseph Kosinski, who did Tron Legacy and most recently Top Gun Maverick, which this is a far departure from something like that. And it was written by Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, who did Deadpool and Zombieland. The movie stars Miles Teller, Jurnee Smollett, and Chris Hemsworth. Justin, let's get into this. This as I mentioned, was directed by Joseph Kosinski. It seems like a really interesting choice as a follow-up to what I think everyone is raving about, one of the best movies of the year, Top Gun Maverick. This movie also has a plane in it. It also has Miles Teller in it, but it's nowhere near as Top Gun Maverick, is it?
Yeah, this is a far departure from something like Top Gun, but it's not actually that much of a far departure from other movies that he's done. He tends to do these movies that are very dystopian looks at the future to a certain degree. Tron Legacy is very much that. Oblivion, one movie that you didn't call out, and then also this movie as well. It is, but it isn't. I think Top Gun is a success on its own right for a multitude of reasons, not just because of Joseph Kosinski. I think there's a lot of layers of why that movie is really, really successful. But to see what his types of movies that Joseph Kosinski makes, this does actually fit into his body of work outside of Top Gun.
I guess the issue I have with it is less the direction and more the writing, which, you know, I think the dialogue in this movie is laughable at times. You've already heard us call out all the different drugs that they say with like such precision, and they're giving, you know, the cast is giving such serious performances around some of the most ridiculous dialogue. And I think, honestly, for me, coming from the Deadpool writers, I expected it to be more laugh with it than laugh at it. I thought it would be a little more self-aware. And I think the movie would have been better for it if it leaned in one direction or the other. I think sometimes it's overtly serious, and then it has the opportunity to laugh a little bit, and it doesn't take those opportunities. And then there's other times where it does try to be funny, and it just comes off as slapstick silliness.
It's silly.
Yeah, and
I
it skirts the line. And the cast, like, don't get me wrong, like, it's a great cast. They're doing everything they can to make this movie feel realistic, but the writing just really, really loses it.
Yeah, I think for me, the problem with this movie is the writing wholeheartedly. It has nothing to do with the performances from Chris Hemsworth, Miles Teller, or Journey Smollett. I think they were absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
given what they had to work with. I just don't think that this story was in any way fleshed out enough for us to actually care or understand. Like when certain things happen in this movie that you can tell the movie is really trying to say, oh, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
But I don't really get it as the viewer. Like, I don't understand what the big deal is. I'm kind of like, well, wasn't that the case already? I'm confused as to how this story is meant to kind of flow. And I think that maybe it has something to do with the fact that it's based off of a short story. You know what I mean? Like, I don't imagine that the writing duo who did Deadpool would necessarily try to write this as a very Deadpool-esque, you know, self-referential, but give something more to it. Right, because I think that this story is so thin, and it's very apparent given the pacing and just how information is fed to us through this story.
Just wondering if they were the right choice for this. I mean, we've got Bullet Train coming up soon, and that seems like a perfect fit for them. Where this just doesn't fully jive with I think what they're going for. I mean, this is the same year that we got something like Severance, and I think this Spiderhead concept as a series could have been something really spectacular, where they could have really drawn this out over time.
Explored the characters a bit more, right? Understand their motives, right?
It feels like a cheap Netflix, like just another Netflix movie. Here you go. Netflix movie kind of thing,
well,
right?
I think that this is where, you know, we're surrounded by media now that's either a series or a movie, and we're always going to say, oh, it could have been a better this, or it could have been a better that. And I totally agree with you. I think that if you really wanted to draw this out and really make things a little bit more punchy, it probably would have worked better as a mini series. But again, I don't think that we need to necessarily always just default it to that. It's bad because it wasn't written well. You could tell this story in a movie. You shouldn't have to be able to say, oh, well, it would work better as a series, right? I think in this case here, this is just a real testament to just a lack of really understanding what it is this movie's trying to say. Because I even at the end of it, I was like, what was it about, really?
Sure. What was it really trying to? What was
like?
The moral?
What's it? The themes that it's playing with. Like,
yeah.
Again, like you said, they take themselves seriously, but then, you know, they skirt the line with comedy, and it's like, is that supposed to be funny? Oh, okay. So now we're here in a serious moment. Is that meant to be serious? Is he being sarcastic? It's just
right.
It's very
to the point where like some of the jokes, when we're talking about a movie that should take itself more seriously, we get some extremely dark moments of horrible real human emotion and pain, and both mentally and physically in this movie, and some gore, but then we also get like a feces joke, and we get like a kick to the nuts joke. Like it's just those moments where I was just like, what are you doing? Like, what are you? It completely lost me. I think, you know, going back to the performances, I think Chris Hemsworth is charming, but he never felt sinister, especially if we're looking at him. Like, I think the trailer, it's not a spoiler to say he is our antagonist.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I never really got to the point where we spent enough time with him to truly see his motivations until it's just sort of blurted out in expository dialogue. And I need more from my villain in that case, especially with Chris Hemsworth having that's such a great opportunity to bring him in as a villain.
100%. I think that's so smart, given the fact that, he does play Thor and is a hero most of the times. I totally agree. And yeah, you're right. Like, nothing felt earned in this movie.
Yeah.
Like it was just given. It was just told. It was just shown. Nothing. You had no real connection to the characters through how they were written and how we were kind of to unravel the mystery of them and their past and so on and so forth throughout this movie. It just, even when we get what we get, it just doesn't feel earned. It doesn't feel like it matters. And I agree with you. I think for Chris Hemsworth, he did show range in being aggressive and suddenly just being, not the charming guy, but suddenly just being aggressive. That's good. That's great from a performance standpoint, but his character, the way it was written, there just wasn't enough there for us to, as you said, really believe that he is the bad guy. You know what I mean? Like it's I know you haven't seen Jurassic World Dominion yet, but I gotta say, like, this villain, the villain structure here feels very similar. And the villain as surrounding a sort of technological or pharmaceutical, in this case, research development, and it's kind of like he's seen like one of those tech millennials that's very, very hyper aware.
Just so everyone's aware, he does do a rich white guy villain dance halfway through the movie that seems to be a theme in the most recent movies that we've been seeing, the maniacal rich white guy. And you know what, this actually reminds me of
Joker.
Well, I was gonna say Fresh. Actually, it reminded me a lot of Fresh in the sense of sort of its
spiritually.
It felt like kind of another one of those movies. Like, this would be like a double bill with that kind of movie. And so that's not to say, like, again, I was entertained by Fresh. I was entertained by this movie to a certain degree to keep watching it, but it doesn't overstay its welcome, thank goodness, because then I think my score would be a little bit lower than it actually is. But I kept getting reminded of all the interesting things that it sort of sets up, and then just the execution was just not there.
No, that's entirely
that was the worst part.
Yeah, that's entirely it. I think that there's, on the surface, there's a lot of things to look at this movie, like Chris Hemsworth, Miles Teller, Judy Smollett. The fact that Joseph Kosinski is behind it.
The writers of Deadpool, you
on the
put
surface,
all this on paper, right?
Yeah, exactly, and it looks great. And I think that's why this got greenlit by Netflix. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think didn't really get any rewrites. It seems like it just kind of this fell short. So yeah, 100% execution was missed. It looked great. Yeah, performances were good. It's just the writing
music.
suffered.
I actually liked a lot of the music choices that they made.
Oh yeah,
in the movie.
Yes, exactly. The sort of retro vintage music that's used throughout. That's very 80s inspired. I think it speaks to the time of Chris Hemsworth's character, Steve Abnesti, and I think it just speaks to his background, and I think also just it speaks to the theme of emotion. That's not to say that they're not playing with some interesting themes. Throughout talking about emotions and the use of pharmaceutical drugs to very much like, either curb that, control it, or even just, manipulate in many ways. And that in itself, the idea of exploring human emotions through pharmaceuticals is almost like human emotions are the problem. What if pharmaceuticals could solve that problem? So, it's interesting themes, but just, again, not really executed or fleshed out of the way we would want to see it.
And Justin, in a movie all about manipulating emotions, this movie didn't do any of that to me.
No, exactly.
It didn't
do it. Exactly. Thematically, though, what they're talking about is interesting, but the movie itself does not do that.
And that's where I struggle with this movie, in the same way that I kind of struggled with Fresh, is that I could see the light in the darkened flocks. I could see the light, and it just never fully made it there. So let's get to our final thoughts for this movie, which we're going to be rating on a scale of 1 to 5 milligrams of darkened flocks.
Yeah. Oh, well, again, like I was kind of just saying there, like this movie is somewhat interesting from a thematic standpoint. again, dealing with pharmaceuticals and the capacity of human emotions, and, trying to say that human emotions might be the problem, and that pharmaceuticals can answer that. But this movie is seriously lacking a meaning, an overall definition. I think we were touching on it very well in our discussion here, where it's just not executed properly. I don't think any of what we were given in terms of background for these characters and moments ever felt earned. I never felt connected to them. Again, the cast did bring their A game to their performances, but the writing for each of these characters just felt, very thin and very light. I just don't think the writing really stood up to giving them much to work with. So for that reason, I am going to give this movie a 2.5 out of 5 Darkened Phlox.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. This is a movie that feels like you get some popcorn, you put it on, and you sit down and you watch it. It's not going to really last. I think it doesn't go far enough in any direction, again, either serious or camp, for me to really fall in love with it and to kind of sit there and be like, oh, I see what they're doing. You can't. I never got there. Trust me, I love mysterious island stories. I love prison breakout movies. I love sci-fi futuristic or dystopian narratives, but this just felt like a little hit of all of those genres that just doesn't go far enough. Yeah, like a temporary drug, the effects of this movie will wear off after 48 hours of seeing it, I promise you. Well. So again, I enjoy the premise. I should read the short story. Maybe I'll like that a lot more, because I like what this movie sets up. I like the cast. I like the writers. I like the director. I like the ideas, but they just don't do enough to support any of those ideas, and they never break the surface level. So there's better movies and better stories that are like this, that are so much more memorable. So just maybe watch those, and on Netflix too, I guarantee it. So I as well, I felt very similar to Fresh. I think Fresh did a little bit more for me than this movie did, and so I gave Fresh a 3. I'm going to give this also 2.5 milligrams of Darkened Phlox. I think that's a safe amount. Of Darkened Phlox. We're not going to
I don't know. That joke seems like it'll fuck you up, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that is it. We hope you enjoyed this spoiler-free review for Spiderhead. And if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And if you want to write into the show with your thoughts on Spiderhead, maybe you enjoyed it more than we did. Maybe we just, need to take some more drugs or something before we watch it again. Justin, shoot, you know what? I need a refill of remembrance. Justin, can you let our listeners know how they can reach us?
They can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or they can reach out to us on Twitter at GeekcentricYT or on Instagram at wearegeekcentric.
Keep in mind, we have a ton of other great episodes covering the latest in movies, TV shows, and games, including our spoiler-free review for Disney and Pixar's Lightyear, which is out right now, as well as our interviews with Lightyear director Angus MacLean, producer Galen Sussman, and composer Michael Giacchino. So go check out those interviews. We also have an interview up with Miss Marvel directors Adil and Bilal, who directed episode 1 and 6 of that show. And we currently have our watch clubs for both Miss Marvel and Obi-Wan well underway, with new episodes breaking down every moment filled with speculation, dropping every Friday. And finally, we also have our This Week in Geek episodes on Wednesdays. Our last episode was all about Star Wars Celebration, where Darcy and I let Justin know about some really cool stuff that we got to see and experience at Star Wars Celebration. So definitely check out that episode if you want to hear about some stuff that hasn't even been released to the public yet. So go give those episodes a listen and a 5-star review if you don't mind. All right, Justin. Well, this was short and sweet. This test is over. I think you passed. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And as we say, love ya.
Peace.